Welcome to Gold Coast Insider, where we bring you business insights, stories, opportunities, and forecasts from movers and shakers across the Gold Coast. I'm your host, Girard. I'm CEO of Regional Development Australia Gold Coast. The Gold Coast is no longer just one of Australia's fastest growing cities. It's becoming one of its most investable. With billions of dollars in major projects, infrastructure and private investment shaping its next decade of growth, alongside a rapidly expanding economy approaching over $40 billion and rising. At IDA, we connect businesses with opportunities, drive innovations and help shape a stronger, more resilient economy. And today's guest is right in the centre of that momentum. Mark Girard is the inaugural CEO of Invest Gold Coast, leading the charge to attract investment, unlock major projects, and position the Gold Coast as a world-class destination for business, capital, and growth. So don't forget to like and subscribe for more episodes. Mark, welcome, and thank you for taking time out today to chat to us.
Morning, Estella.
So let's start. Let's go back into your journey. What are some of the key roles and experiences that have really shaped your career up to this point?
Yeah, so early on in my career, I had a career in consulting engineering and was fortunate enough to be the CEO of an engineering company that built infrastructure for local governments across Queensland. And from there, I ended up in corporate finance and was managing director of the advisory business at the Queensland Treasury Corporation, also heavily involved in the debt capital markets side of the business. And that gave me some great insights into the importance of communicating the diversity of the Queensland economy to the world to encourage investors and help investors understand just how diverse Queensland economy is, that it's not just a coal mining state, that our state is so much more. And I've taken all of those things and looking to apply those here at Invest Gold Coast.
And that leads us on, as CEO of Invest Gold Coast, what excites you most about taking on this role at such a pivotal time for the city?
Yeah, well, look, I think when I look at the Gold Coast, some of the metrics that really stand out for me are it's the second biggest local government area in Australia.
Yeah.
It's the largest local non-capital city in Australia, and it's the fastest growing city in Australia by gross regional product. And what that means is that it's really positioning itself for growth in the future. The other big standout for me is just how diverse the economy is on the Gold Coast. It's changed enormously in the last 20 years from a city that used to be so reliant on construction and tourism. And construction and tourism are still really important parts of the economy on the Gold Coast. But the strategic pillars that are going to set the city up for success over the coming 20 years around film and screen, the boating industry, so marine industry, education. We've got 3 universities, 6 TAFEs in a city that has 700,000 people, which is just extraordinary when you look at it. One of the largest startup and founder communities in Australia is based on the Gold Coast, as well as a massive biomedical research outfit centered around the Gold Coast Health and Knowledge Precinct, and a space and advanced manufacturing industry that rivals any other city in Australia.
So that brings us to Invest Gold Coast. So the Gold Coast has that reputation that most cities would envy, like we have beaches, lifestyle, sunshine. But can you tell us, we're here to talk about something beyond that. So how do you describe what Invest Gold Coast actually does and what it means to the broader business community?
So yeah, what Invest Gold Coast is here to do, and my KPIs are pretty simple. They're to grow gross regional product, and grow jobs, and not just any jobs, but highly skilled, highly paid jobs. What the mayor and our board are really focused on is how can we create an environment where kids who finish school and go to university on the Gold Coast don't have to leave to go to Sydney, to go to Melbourne, to go to Brisbane, or go to other parts of the world to have fulfilling careers. We want our kids to be able to have really interesting, fulfilling careers in industries that are based on the Gold Coast. And so that's why it's so important that we focus on growing those key pillars of our economy, continuing to develop and diversify our economy around those key pillars,
Hmm.
so that we can create a really interesting space for our kids and economy for our children to participate in.
And the mayor's been quite passionate about that, and rightly so too, because given the economics of what's happened and housing and and rental affordability, it's really important that, and the lack of being able to get employees as well. It's really important that we try and grow local, stay local, educate local, and employ local, isn't it? I mean, it's even more important now than it's ever been, really.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that doesn't mean that that children and kids that are educated here on the Gold Coast
Mm,
aren't going to go
yeah.
away and have experiences around the world. In fact,
Mm,
you want to encourage people to go and do that. But to know that once they've had that experience, they've had that opportunity, that there are fulfilling careers
mm, mm,
for people to come back to. And I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of, to make that work, we need to have access to the right forms of housing
yeah.
and accommodation to support the growth of our economy. Lots of people want to come to the Gold Coast, not just because it's a great place to live. The beaches are great, but one of the things that really stands out when you look at the statistics
Mm,
about who moves here and why they move here, we've got a really highly mobile, highly educated, younger than other cities, that 35 to 45-year-old cohort that are moving from places like Sydney, Canberra, and Melbourne,
So,
moving.
Mark, just to butt in, so that's really interesting because we've always thought that the Gold Coast was almost like this older, more retirement type of environment. So, has that changed? Has that actually and when did that change?
It's changing. It's probably started changing. Post COVID was
COVID, yeah,
a catalyst for a lot of people to reassess their lives,
yeah,
and people who were thinking. I've had, and I'm sure many of us have had conversations with relatives, friends, business colleagues in Sydney or Melbourne
mm,
who always wanted to move north to Queensland, to southeast
yeah,
Queensland,
yeah,
and COVID was the catalyst to do it. So rather than wait until, they were ready to retire, they thought, well, let's just move now. Let's move the
very
family
good.
up now. We'll keep it bolt hole in Sydney or Melbourne. I can
Mm-hmm,
still run my business in Melbourne.
mm-hmm,
We're only an hour away,
yeah,
or a couple of hours from Sydney or Melbourne. We've got two airports to choose from out of Brisbane or the Gold Coast,
yeah,
and people have voted with their feet. They've moved here. They've made a strategic business or family decision to pack up and move here. And the other really interesting statistics about that cohort that are moving here is, not only are they younger than normal, and that doesn't mean to say that we don't have people coming to retire on the Gold
mm,
Coast. Of
mm,
course we
mm,
do, and I expect we always will. But that younger cohort, more educated than average relative to other cities, have higher incomes relative to some of the other capital cities, and they're highly productive. They're at the most productive parts in their career,
yeah, yeah,
coupled with that a really low unemployment rate. Uh,
yeah,
Gold Coast.
absolutely.
So, what you can almost guarantee, for a business community is, or, as someone moving to the Gold Coast, a high probability that if you've got skills that are
Yeah.
compatible with those industries that we want to develop here, you'll get a job.
Absolutely, absolutely. But Invest Gold Coast, that transitioned from a council department into an independent entity. I think it was back in about 2025. What does that shift enable you to do differently, and how does it strengthen that collaboration with regional partners, such as RDA, for instance?
So, from my perspective, we've got a highly competent board with some of the best business minds in
Mm, mm,
Australia on our
okay,
board. That's really, number one. That's
yeah,
what drew me
got
to the
it.
role. I think that's just so important for demonstrating just how confident, or the confidence in the city is. If you've got business people,
Mm,
household names, running this company, just how serious they are about making this work for the city.
Mm,
The other thing is the commercial focus that we bring as an external entity, predominantly private sector focused employees. So, and that's what we need to be, an agile and
mm,
responsive entity for the city and be able to deliver on the things that the city sees as important.
yeah. You've once described the Gold Coast as a city of unpretentious ambition. What does that mean to you day to day?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a really interesting topic, that one, and it's something that we work together with Todd Babiak from Brand
Mm, mm,
on. What it says is that, this is a city where, your history, where you went to school, is less important than it might be in other places. That
mm,
it's a city that welcomes anyone.
mm,
One of the things that I find really fascinating about the Gold Coast is the intersection of, or the way that people live. You've got billionaires living next door to people renting, and everyone's happy, and everyone finds their space together, and everyone lives together and works together, and it's such a cohesive place, an easy place for people to belong.
mm,
So that unpretentious nature of people is, they don't take themselves too seriously, but they're deadly serious about what it is they either want to do in business,
mm,
or
mm,
what it is that they want to achieve in their life. And they've made a decision about moving to the Gold Coast to change their life. And a lot of the feedback that Todd from Brand has been able to garner from the research he's done is that people, that they have actually changed their lives by coming here, either their personal life, or they've turned around businesses, or been able to create businesses or outcomes in business that they haven't been able to do in other cities. And this is a city that, is happy to get behind anyone.
mm, mm.
Will give, yeah, happy to give everyone and anyone a go.
You've mentioned people moving from Sydney and Melbourne. So, what's causing that shift and what's driving that?
Some of the articles that you might have read recently in the mastheads, like the Australian Financial Review, point to, particularly for younger families, it's just unaffordable to live in places like Sydney anymore.
Mm,
While the incomes and jobs might be there, it's just not a fun place to live. And so many young families that I talk to, or people that are looking, for jobs outside of Sydney, tell me that they want to move somewhere, where they can still have a fulfilling career, an interesting job,
mm,
but somewhere where they can, buy into an affordable home. And while Gold Coast property prices are still very expensive, it's much more attainable
yeah.
for a professional, or a couple of professionals than it is in Sydney. I think that's fundamentally what's driving people
Mm,
out of those centres.
mm-hmm.
And together with that, particularly, for families with children, it's what the AFR described as a baby boom in some of the regions, and the Gold Coast is a
Mm.
beneficiary of that.
So, the Gold Coast, as we have mentioned, is evolving way past its lifestyle brand because we've always said, it's a place where you've got the beach and then the mountains, you've got everything. You've got everything here in this wonderful part of the world. But from an Invest Gold Coast perspective, what are the key factors that are making it a compelling place for investors right now?
One of the really interesting statistics of the last few years has been the level of business reinvestment.
Oh,
So that's existing businesses willing to reinvest their own capital
okay.
into their businesses, and at three times the rate of other cities in Australia. So that just tells you a whole lot about the confidence that existing businesses have in the city. And that confidence breeds the confidence of businesses outside of the city
Okay.
to want to relocate here. Every day of the week, we're answering phone calls from businesses in Sydney and Melbourne across the spectrum. So, whether it be advanced manufacturing, whether it be a business that's adjacent to the space industry, we've got Gilmore Space
Yeah.
based here. Whether it's a biomedical research facility moving from, who are headquartered in Canada, looking at a Southern
Mm.
Hemisphere
Yeah.
base. We answer those calls every day. We have a small incentive program that we make available to business
Mm-hmm.
to either relocate here on the basis that they achieve, key targets around jobs, job creation, and capital investment
Yeah.
in the city. And that deal flow is as strong as it's ever been.
Wow, that's really good. It's almost like we've got to a critical mass.
It,
We've
we are. We've definitely approached that critical mass. And I said earlier, the tipping point has been, and the credibility, I think,
mm,
to the mayor and the councillors for the work they've done in the last decade
yeah,
in putting their shoulder behind diversifying the economy and making the investment in things like the Griffith Health and Knowledge Precinct
mhm,
in industrial areas in the north of the city
mm,
around Yatala,
mm,
in getting their shoulder behind the film industry. And
yeah,
that's just created, opportunities and have driven interest and growth and more support in those industries. The film industry, for example, Baz Luhrmann and his entire production team are relocated from the US to Australia
mm,
and are now based permanently here. So, yeah, it's those stories that just, reinforce the strength of the economy.
mm,
Uh, and they tell those stories to their friends and colleagues overseas, which creates that spark and interest in, well, what is it that's going on the Gold Coast? There's
mm,
something
mm,
that's going
mm.
on in that place,
Got
and I
it.
can't quite put my finger on it.
Mm,
Uh,
mm.
and I think that's what's driving that genuine interest to try and understand, how can I be part of it?
It builds up that momentum, doesn't it? Once it starts, it keeps snowballing. But I want to talk about some of the projects, but before I do, I want to actually talk about a little bit more in depth about, our population is heading for, about 1,000,000 people in 2040. I think that's probably gonna hit it before then. We're sitting at about 700 and something thousand now. Um, but for you in Invest Gold Coast, you really need to have forward thinking. You really need to see, what are the infrastructure decisions that can't wait now? And what does that growth mean? So, from your perspective, how do you handle that? Like, what's your take on that?
There's a few things that really stand out for me, and while these apply to the Gold Coast, when you think nationally about what are the issues that we
Mm,
face
yeah.
across, all major cities in Australia, I'd say they're probably pretty similar. One is productivity, and what is it that we need to do to improve productivity in the way that we deliver
Mm,
infrastructure at such a critical time in the growth and development of our country. The second one that I think is central to that is housing.
mm,
So, as a rapidly growing city, the Gold Coast needs access to diverse forms of housing.
mm,
It's an expensive place to buy a home.
yeah.
It's got some of the most expensive real estate in Australia, particularly along the coastal strip, and some of the lowest vacancy rates for
Mm,
rental accommodation in Australia as well. And what we really need is key worker and affordable housing.
mm,
And we're not the only city in that boat.
mm,
So we need to find ways to work with the private sector to build that class of infrastructure more productively,
mhm,
and than we've been able to in the past. The other thing that really stands out for me is while our static population is around 700,000 people, our visitor economy is enormous. We have
true.
experienced Gold Coast tell us, between 13 and 14 million people a year
Wow.
visit the Gold Coast. And sure, that's lumpy throughout the year.
Mm,
You think about, what does that mean on a day-to-day basis? Add that visitor economy to our static population, and on any given day of the week, we can have between 1.5, sometimes up to 2 million people here are using all of our infrastructure. And if it feels like
mm,
it's busy, it's because our infrastructure is being really well used. So, if I'm thinking ahead, well, if that growth continues, how do we get ahead of the infrastructure curve? And, what role do states and federal governments
yeah.
play in providing the funding support to a rapidly growing city like the Gold Coast? It
Mm,
just
mm,
hasn't been able to, I think, attract the level of funding that it's needed. Sure, we've had support around light rail,
mhm,
but and road infrastructure, but there's so much more that we need to do. And, praise goes to the previous state governments for investing in the first few stages of light rail
Mm-hmm.
and the Canberra connector,
Yep.
which will take a lot of pressure off the N1.
Mm.
I think there's more we can do too in terms of commercial infrastructure for workers who are otherwise travelling to Brisbane. There's
Mm.
about 1,000 people a day travel from the Gold Coast to Brisbane.
Sorry, how many?
About 200,000 vehicles a day travelling to Brisbane. What is it that we can do to keep them working on the Gold Coast, to take pressure off that really important road
Mm.
infrastructure? If they don't need to be in Brisbane and they can work here and be just as productive here,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
being able to, tap into that commercial rental accommodation for business
Yeah. Yeah.
too.
Do you think that given the fuel and what's happening currently, that will impact and make people reconsider their habits? I mean, what they and really look at what they need to do versus what they can do?
Certainly, when I look at the patronage on the light rail, we're
Yeah.
based in Southport, right on the light rail line. I've never seen the trams more packed.
Really?
So people are clearly using this as an
Mm.
opportunity to say, "Oh, well, a 50-cent fare, I'll definitely try public
Yeah.
transport."
Yeah.
Uh,
And I guess when you drive around the Gold Coast and look at what's being built or what hasn't been built yet, what do you see that most people don't?
I think some of the standouts for me are
Mm.
going to be the social infrastructure, and I'm gonna lead into the Olympics here.
Yeah, yeah, we've got to
We're
go there.
we're responsible for delivering the Gold Coast Arena,
Yes.
which is an Olympic venue. It's a designated venue. It's a project that's in market at the moment. We've just completed the EOI stage,
Mhm.
and we're having a look at. We're now working with a preferred proponent,
Oh, excellent.
Plenary, who are the lead partner, together with Live Nation, Oakview Group,
Mhm.
and who are the constructor. And that will be a 12,000 to 17,000 seat arena here at Southport. Land has been provided by the state to the
Mhm.
Gold Coast to build the arena on. It'll be activated around, not only will it be used for the Olympics, the concession period for this public-private partnership, and by PPP, we mean the state and the local government are going to
Yep.
contribute the land. Our consortia partners will deliver the capital to build the arena and then
Mhm.
operate it for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
They're looking at activating that building, the arena, 3 to 4 times a week, day and night, bringing 25 to 30,000 people into Southport
Mm.
to use that arena every week. So the economic uplift to Southport will be enormous. As
Mm-mm.
a result of that, the activation around Southport, will be enormous. And it's the catalytic infrastructure that will help transform parts of the city that really need some work put into them, like
Yeah.
Southport.
What opportunities do you see our local suppliers taking advantage of through this process?
Yeah, it's a good question, Estella. Local
Mm.
content is really important. That's the term we use.
Yep.
And that's something, on the basis this project goes ahead and we get support to move through the next stage gate and take this project to financial close and start construction
Mm.
in 2027. What we build into the contracts, a requirement to use local content,
Oh,
to use
brilliant.
local trades, local subcontractors, material providers, all of the things that actually make it easier, simpler
Yeah.
for our consortia partners to deliver the project.
And so if I was a business listening and thinking, "Oh, this is exciting times ahead, and I'd like to, look into this and be part of it," how would they go about doing that, Mark?
So there'll be meet the buyer events. There's been one already, only a few weeks ago,
Yep.
led by the Olympic Delivery Authority. That's more broad than just
Mm.
the project. So across all of the Olympic
Yeah.
infrastructure sites, and we will integrate our project into that,
Oh,
those meet the buyer opportunities so that, providers, local
mm.
providers get the opportunity to be part of this really important project.
Oh, absolutely, and we're happy to ensure that we put it up so that buyers are aware of when it's all happening and how they can be part of it as well. You mentioned Baz Luhrmann. Let's talk about the other exciting sector that we have. The Gold Coast is a long-established film or screen industry. It's now valued at over $1 billion. So what's changing? And I guess for those that don't know about it, what's changing with the Miami Arts Depot and the Shadow Box at Studio at Yatla? Do you want to talk them through that? Because they're really exciting. I mean, this is just moving it into a whole new stratosphere, really, for what we're being known for. So it's
Yeah,
brilliant.
yeah, that's right. And when people think about the film industry in Australia, what they're really talking about is the film industry on the Gold Coast. And again, credit to
Mm.
Aaron, the councillors for their foresight and the
Yeah.
effort that they've put into, supporting the industry. And it's not just funding support that the city provides, but the
Mhm.
permitting support, all of the practical work that the city does to make it so much easier for filmmakers to get access to sites,
Mm,
to
mm.
close for filming. It's those simple things that are just as important as
Yeah.
the support that the federal, state, and local governments provide. What's happening at the Miami Arts Depot
Yeah.
is we're working with Basmark and Baz Luhrmann and Catherine Martin,
Mhm.
potential to develop the post-production capacity on the Gold Coast.
Oh, okay.
So a little bit like mining, we dig up the coal and we dig up the iron ore, and similarly with filmmaking, we make the films here, but they go overseas
Yeah.
for post-production where all the value add happens.
Mhm.
And what we want to do is be able to do that on shore. So
Okay.
that's the sole purpose of the Miami Arts Depot. And
Brilliant.
it's a public-private partnership where the city will contribute the land.
Mhm.
About 25% of the site we'd look to retain for the post-production commercial footprint of the site, and the remainder to be a residential development that helps pay for
Mm, mm.
the commercial component, as well as providing, affordable housing and key worker housing for people in the film industry who are those digital nomads
Yeah.
who travel with their laptops. They can go anywhere in the world and are so important to the industry here. If we want to have an industry like the film industry grow in Queensland and on the Gold Coast, they need somewhere that they
Mm,
can
mm.
afford to live. So that's an important part of that site as well. The other part you mentioned, which is Shadowbox, is
Shadowbox.
all about
Mm.
creating additional studio space.
Okay.
Uh, the one thing that the industry is screaming out for is more studio space. We're currently renting the old people on the Gold Coast would remember the old Albert Shire
Mm.
accommodation at Nerang. We're looking to repurpose that into accommodation as well. But in the meantime,
Oh,
that building's being used by the film industry for filming and post production right now.
wow. I didn't know that. So
Yeah.
when's Shadowbox going to be up and running?
That's work that we're still doing with the city at the moment to
Right.
finalise the
Excellent.
negotiation, the commercial deal that we're negotiating with Shadowbox. So it's
Mm.
watch this space.
I just love the fact that with the Miami project, it's bringing in a whole new set of skills for local people that can go to university, learn that, and actually put it into practice right here on the Gold Coast. It's bringing in this whole new dimension, isn't it, of this work and experience?
Yeah, and what's also really interesting about the film industry is the career path opportunities for people,
Yes.
who've already had careers. So,
Ah,
for people who've been in real estate, the people in the film industry tell me, well, they become great location scouts.
mm,
You might have had a career in a trade that's
mm,
transferable to, being a grip or working on a set, putting up scaffolding, making sets, doing set design.
mm,
So the really interesting thing about the industry is that it creates career pathways and job opportunities, not just for people straight out of university or TAFE,
mm, yeah.
but for people who are mid-career who are looking for a change as well. And
Mm,
that's what the industry overseas looks for, is for depth and
yeah.
availability of people across that, broad spectrum,
Mm.
locally, because if they don't have access to the people, they can't make the films.
And
And
I
we're
did. Oh,
a
sorry.
massive, a massive employer,
Yeah.
the film industry. It employs over 6,000 people
Wow.
on the Gold Coast, which is great and just
Mm.
demonstrates how important it is to our economy.
And Mark, I was surprised to hear the other day that we've got something like 5 acting schools here, right here on the Gold Coast.
Yeah, that's true. Gina Black is our film commissioner that works
Mm.
here. It's the Gold Coast only film commissioner works here with us and Invest Gold Coast, and she works very closely in the support of those private film schools, as well as with TAFEs. So there are TAFEs that have specific programs to support the film industry, and we're also spending a lot of time at the moment working with the Griffith University Film School about where might be their opportunities to tap into that expertise that otherwise sits in Brisbane,
Mm.
and move it down to the Gold Coast, or make it more accessible to the film industry, which is by and large on the Gold Coast.
So exciting times, and who would have thought, 10 years ago we'd be sitting here saying, "Oh, we've got acting schools and we've got, shadow box and we've got, editing skills coming to the Gold Coast." It's really, really good. But I want to talk beyond those projects that have been announced. What types of opportunities are you currently focused on to bring to market next?
Yeah. So earlier on in the podcast, we talked about my previous experience,
Yeah.
which was how do you communicate and market the diversity of your local economy? The one thing that's really stood out for me is how many amazing businesses there are on the Gold Coast
Mm.
that
Mm.
fly under the radar. You wouldn't even know they're there.
Okay.
Companies like PWR, who
Yep.
provide cooling systems for the Formula One racing team
Mhm.
and defense applications, they just hit their $1 billion market cap a couple of weeks ago. So here's an ASX listed company with $1 billion market cap
Mm.
right here on the Gold Coast that most people don't even know is there. So what is it that we need to do with
Mm.
the business community to help support the next PW? So we're working with companies like Bivacor,
Yep.
who are headquartered out of our Griffith Health and Knowledge Precinct. They're currently doing clinical trials in the US with their mechanical heart,
Mhm.
and they'll manufacture the hearts in the US. But we're working with them on the supply chain locally
Mm.
here in Australia.
Okay.
And what is it that we need to do to manufacture those hearts on the Gold Coast and
Mhm.
assemble them on the Gold Coast, not just for Australia, but for the rest of the world?
Mhm.
So it's those sorts of opportunities that we want to develop in the next iteration of and
Mm.
growth of Invest Gold Coast. And
Mhm.
it's projects like that and opportunities like that that are going to really drive the diversification of our economy and create the job opportunities of the future for people here on the coast.
So the barbacores are very exciting, isn't it? So you're trying to bring onto shore the manufacturing of those hearts, those artificial hearts. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So looking ahead, what are the real world outcomes you want Invest Gold Coast to have delivered, maybe over the next 5 years? What's your big picture?
Yeah, the big picture for me is having delivered some successful
Mm. Mm.
priority infrastructure projects like the arena,
Yep.
like the Miami Arts Depot,
Yep.
like the transformation of the Nerang accommodation into
That's
key worker housing
Yep.
and affordable housing. Projects like Southport's redevelopment and delivering on the redevelopment of other hubs around the coast. And then next is creating the pipeline of new opportunities. So what are the
Mm.
projects that are going to come next
Mm.
beyond this? We're going to chew on those projects for a few years. It'll take us a while to get through those,
Mm.
but we need the pipeline that sits behind that,
Mm.
and not just in infrastructure and development opportunities, but also in opportunities to support, major, business relocations,
Yeah,
uh,
right.
or
Mm.
or upgrades locally, like the Bivacor example,
Yeah.
uh, because they're the things that are going to drive the gross regional product and the jobs that are going to
Mm.
transform our economy.
And Mark, I was just thinking while you were talking, we talk about the arena, we talk about the impact the arena will have and how it'll bring sports and it'll bring, events and entertainment. But what we don't talk about is that snowball effect of where it's being positioned and how it's going to support that whole Southport area, and even the businesses, even the cafes, the restaurants. It's just going to have this wider ripple effect, isn't it? So, whilst I keep talking about the arena in isolation, it isn't. It's a whole story of a whole region and how that's going to have this massive effect on it, a positive effect.
Yeah, exactly right. And, that's all part of the Gold Coast transforming into
Yeah.
and growing as a modern city, one that's very different to every other city that has, a central CBD.
Mm.
Ours is a city that has, multiple centers to it, which is great. As a linear city, we're very different
Yeah. Yeah.
to all of the others, and we've got to think uniquely and creatively about how we best use, you know, scarce
Mm.
resources,
Mm.
deploy capital in ways that deliver the outcomes, yeah, in ways that that work for us.
So, having got a good visual on what's happening on the Gold Coast, what needs to happen on the Gold Coast, and the rapid growth of the Gold Coast, what if you could change one thing about how the Gold Coast is understood, and that's by government and by investors and by Australia, I guess, what would that be, and what does it need to have happen in order to realistically get to the position we need to be in?
I think the Gold Coast needs, more serious funding support
Mm.
from our federal and state colleagues in the areas that the mayor and the councillors have done a lot of heavy lifting in the last decade or so,
Mhm.
which is around diversifying our economy
Right.
and helping to support the city to grow into the best version of a modern Australian city that I think Australia's probably ever seen. It's
Mm.
got the best attributes of any city in Australia,
Has.
and the best people, and the people with the best attitudes,
Mm.
and that's something to celebrate, and to encourage support to get behind the next
Mm.
stage of growth. I think is really important for our federal and state colleagues to get behind us on.
Mm. Good message. Good message. So, finally, what's your message to those listening? How can Invest Gold Coast help turn their interest into real investment and outcomes right here on the ground and right here on the Gold Coast?
One of the backdrops you'll see in some of the wallpaper on Invest Gold Coast and Brand Gold
Mm.
Coast and City of Gold Coast
Mm.
marketing paraphernalia is we're the city that says yes.
Mm.
And because, we're a city that's not only, not just open for business, but, we want to find ways to work with you no matter what business you're in, what idea you've got, how can we bring it to life
Good.
here on the Gold Coast? And how do we make you fit into, this city that's just going to be so
Yeah.
important to the development of the Australian economy,
Mhm.
uh, and be part of this really interesting phase of growth
Mm.
on the Gold Coast as the biggest non-capital city in Australia. We want you to be part of that story.
It does sound an exciting time to be right here on the Gold Coast, isn't it? Like, it's full of opportunity, and as you say, it's the city that's saying yes to everyone and everything, and, we just have a very open and welcoming attitude, and I was saying before we started that there's an air of positivity about this place, like the Gold Coast. It's very positive. People are positive on the Gold Coast, and we're positive about the future of the Gold Coast, and I guess in part it's thanks to having the brand Gold Coast, the Invest Gold Coast, and the people that are really, really got that vision and a very clear vision of where to take the city, and that support I think is really necessary as well. So I'd like to thank you for your time today, Mark. Invest Gold Coast is helping drive the next chapter of growth and opportunity for the Gold Coast, and this will continue to evolve. So thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Estella.
Thanks for listening today. For a complete list of podcast episodes and transcripts, go to rdagoldcoast.org.au. unpacks.com.au/podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter.